FPS and most of the conversations around it drive me crazy. Can I be like very vulnerable and possibly controversial with you really quick? Because I know that most people do not think the way I do about FPS.
Back in the 1910s, when film was first evolving as a medium, they used to measure it out in feet in order to match the pace and tempo of any music that was playing, with the standard being between 45 and 65 feet per minute, which translates to about 12 to 18 frames per second in modern times. With over 100 years of development, we've been able to achieve eyeball-shredding speeds of up to 90, 120, hell, even 240 frames per second. Even so, the standard for most film and television broadcasts is 24 frames per second. Recently, it was reported that GTA 6 will be locked in at 30 frames per second. Let me repeat that. GTA 6 will be locked at 30 frames per second, meaning that the game will never dip below this frame rate on console. I think that the modern conversation around FPS is, in all honesty, not the proper conversation we should be having. Don't get me wrong, there are some game genres out there that would suffer as a result of having lower frame rates, but everyone asking for 60 FPS to be the standard don't quite understand the assignment. The human eye, on average, can really only see between 30 and 60 frames per second anyway, so setting the standard on the high end only slows down production time and doesn't really do anything for the visual enjoyment of anybody who doesn't see as well at 60 frames per second compared to lower to 30. I think that there is definitely a conversation to be had when it comes to things like motion blur and graphical fidelity at higher frame rates, but it's not really anything that changes too much compared to the lower end of the spectrum. With 30 as the standard, though, it gives developers that extra bit of breathing room to make crowd sizes bigger, texture more detailed, characters more lively, and just like it seems to be slated to do with GTA 6, has the potential to make the overall consistency of frames per second better. Like I said, I think there are for sure some game genres that ought to be focusing on higher FPS output, like, first-person shooters and competitive sports games, for example. However, the thing to keep in mind is that the genre of the game will always dictate what developers should and will prioritize. Visual novels like Danganronpa don't need to worry as much about world building or frames per second, and sandbox games like No Man's Sky don't really need to focus as heavily on narrative as opposed to, world design and interactability. It's all about prioritizing what makes the game genre the most enjoyable, not trying to reach or adhere to any sort of industry standard or metric that in reality doesn't really exist anyway. But that's just me. Let me know what you guys think. Until next time, I thank you all for watching, and I will see you all out there in the wasteland. Like, share, and follow, and check @followertoshi on all other platforms.